Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we are lucky enough to have Philip Pape from Wits and Weights. We have a real nice discussion about physical wellness. We talk about the obstacles that some people may face.
Accountability, consistency, taking the action that gets you wins every day, like micro wins constantly. It just motivates you.
And how having a more sort of open-minded, flexible approach to it can actually help you accomplish getting more fit and feeling well.
Anybody listening who wants to improve their nutrition massively, you've got to track it. You're training, lifting, exercising, eating in a way that's not enjoyable and it's not getting you the result. We need to go to something that does both.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. And today we have a guest who's all about optimizing both body and mind. He's the host of the highly rated Wits and Weights podcast, where he drives deep into strength training, nutrition, and the science behind getting stronger, both physically and mentally. Philip Pape is not just a coach and fitness expert. He's a numbers guy who takes a strategic, data-driven approach to health and performance. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to see you guys again after you were on my podcast.
Yeah, we had a blast.
We had a blast, and we just know how important physical wellness is for just individual confidence and feeling healthy. And then, of course, right, alongside with couples, like the importance of that wellness together can be so powerful. So we're super excited to pick your brain today.
Yeah. Do you mind just first, introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about yourself, like how you ended up, doing what you do.
Yeah, I got here kind of through an unconventional path. Most of my career has been as an engineering manager in the aerospace industry. Wow. That's where I learned to coach high performance teams and mentor others, and kind of took some of those skills later on to being a nutrition coach. But in between there, what had to happen was I had to have my own personal journey of discovery when it came to training, building muscle, nutrition, and kind of figuring out what worked over many years. And especially it picked up during the pandemic, kind of the opposite of what happened to a lot of folks at that time, where I just dove headfirst into learning about this stuff that we could get into. And that eventually led me to creating the Wits and Weights podcast as a Toastmasters project. You can believe it.
That's cool.
Kind of a public speaking thing.
Yeah.
And I whipped it up in a weekend with some cheap equipment and started a podcast. Didn't know what I was doing. And the podcast really helped me, I guess, blossom in terms of communicating this stuff to people and learning how to simplify it. I'm still working on that, but how to simplify the information, but then tie it into my nerdy, quirky, data-centric engineering background and make it super accessible so people understand, yeah, I can learn about my body in a very confident way that gives me not just the knowledge, which is confusing in this industry, but the knowledge that works for me, that's personalized, and I can take action and get the results. And by result, I mean body composition, fitness, health, longevity, all of that fun stuff. And then once I started doing the podcast, then people said, hey, can you help me out? That actually started with a power lifter here in Connecticut who I was a coworker of because she was an engineer. She came on my show and then said, hey, can you coach me like when my contract expires? I said, I have no idea what to do. What are you talking about? And so that's where I went and got trained in not only nutrition coaching, but as you guys know from running a business, how to take that information and apply it to working with clients effectively, especially online, because I do this 100% online. And then that kind of steamrolled. That was like 2.5, 3 years ago now. So I've coached tons of people through their nutrition, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I love it because it feels like you individualize it for every person, because every person is so unique. So it's not like this, what's the model I'm looking for? Just like this generic model that everyone has to go through, but you're like really looking at the whole to make sure that they can have a successful outcome.
Yeah, you kind of have to do that. It's surprising how certain fields like nutrition or fitness, we think there is a universal approach, right?
Yeah.
The most comments I get on, say, a YouTube video that are polarizing are from people that are in tribes, various tribes, like the carnivore tribe, or you only do high bar squat or low bar squat tribe or whatever. And they come from a place of, hey, I figured this out. It works for me. So of course it should work for everyone. And by the way, if you say something else works for you, no, it doesn't, because it's just going to destroy your life. Like they come from that very siloed approach, which I was that person for probably 15, 20 years, big into CrossFit, big into paleo for like 8 years, the whole primal thing. And I'll say I've evolved and been trying to be open-minded and learned along the way. And now my philosophy is anything can work for anybody. You've got to figure out what that is. And that's how I like to help people.
I love that, because it feels like what you were talking about previously feels so rigid. And then it's like, oh, we don't have a choice. The choice is either this or this. And that we just know that feels limiting in our bodies. We did the paleo thing too. And I just remember feeling like, oh God, I can't even cheat a little bit, because
anything that's rigid feels like the failure rate is so high, because it's like, if you don't stick within this box, then you're screwing up. And then we know that like anytime somebody feels like they fail at something, it's really unmotivating, and it's easy just to say the hell with it. I'm just going to, go back to the way I've been.
And I just have to share this. I was watching one of my dear friends, and she's on Weight Watchers. And like we all went out, we try to go out for like happy hour and pizza, whatever. And she's got her little container of like 4 apples with exactly 1 tablespoon of peanut butter. And she's been on it for a year, and she's really frustrated, but she won't go past it. And I can just see how much anxiety it causes her. I'm like, oh, you can't even like have one like little slice of pizza. And she's like, no, that goes over my points. And I just felt like this compassion for her, because she can't, right? Like let loose a little at the hop shop.
That dichotomy between rigidity and flexibility is at the root of a lot of this. In fact, it's supported by the science when they study groups of people, one being given a rigid diet. Rigid is defined as usually you have to eat this and not this, or sometimes it's defined by when you eat, like intermittent fasting. We're going to have you do a eating window. When you compare that to a flexible diet, and flexible doesn't mean you eat whatever you want, however much you want, whenever you want. It is you have guidelines on the quantity and things like macronutrients and micronutrients, targets or goals or ranges, and then you get to choose what to eat. So it's like you are kind of shifting the restriction, because something has to have a boundary on it, so to speak. Like you have to have structure, but the structure gives you lots of flex within that. And that's what I think is empowering and eye-opening for people. And they're like, oh, I can eat carbs. Oh, I can eat pizza. But it's not like I'm only eating pizza all the time. It's I plan it in for my Saturdays, not like Weight Watchers where I have points and I'm the weird person at no judgment to your friend, but like that's the phrase I use sometimes, like don't be weird, right? Out in public. But it's more of, I'm in control of my week, and I'm in control of my choices within the week. And it's all, it's all a choice.
But that's what I love, because it feels like, from my experience, like when you're in that rigidity, then at some point we're humans, we don't like it. So then we're just going to like, right? And that's why it's that pattern that keeps happening. Like, you're doing really good, and then you fall off the wagon, and then you're doing really good, and then you fall off the wagon. And I love that choice piece, because it feels like, just the flexibility is there.
Well, and then there's no falling off the wagon, right? It's just like, oh, I went outside the lines for this, but it's not like I've completely cracked this structure that I'm trying to hold in.
Which of course reduces shame, which reduces guilt, increases more empowerment. You got to have choice.
So before we get into, we want to take like sort of your expertise around physical wellness into couples. But before we get there, like, let's just give us an idea of like what you've learned about physical wellness's role in just overall wellness. How you've seen people transform themselves in that way, and how it affects them just like holistically.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I love it.
So I guess we can start by defining wellness, which I think comes down to humanity and evolution and our physical relationship with the world, whether it's with people or the world or ourselves, in that we all want to be thriving, fit humans to the day we die, right? We don't want to be a burden on our children. We want to be role models for our loved ones and our children. And what I'm talking about here, I'm tapping into the why that people have for why they do this. It may start with physique or something superficial, but when you really dig into it, it comes down to being a human in this world, and not thinking that you have to succumb to the age-related diseases that we see our parents and grandparents do so. Before we started recording, I was telling Tarah how we've had a couple issues with our family members recently. One person passed away who had been in a nursing home for about 5 or 10 years. Wow. And he had become almost immobile. And it didn't have to end that way. Like I could have seen a path, a fork in the road that could have allowed him to live 20 more years. And of course, you don't say these things out loud. You know, I'm saying this on a podcast, but you don't say these things necessarily. We also have someone else even closer in my family who has a heart-related condition related to blood pressure medication. And then he has a knee issue and he needs a knee replacement. And it's this conglomeration of issues that build up, polypharmacy, where you're on a lot of medications, and just frailty that we think is inevitable. A lot of people do. Actually, I know you guys don't know it's not. And so to answer your question, wellness to me is the health span, right? Yeah. Not just the lifespan, but the health span till you're very old and then you just croak one day because you're just too old. Like that's the way you want to go, right?
Yeah. I love that.
So then you have to reverse engineer that and say, okay, how do we get that? What supports that? Well, I'll tell you what, it's not losing weight. It's having strength and muscle, and it's moving a lot, right? Within the world, and doing occasional play and fun and things for your mental health and some explosive movement as well, like sports or sprinting or something. It's kind of a mix of those things. Not that you have to be a competitive athlete. You don't have to be a power lifter. You definitely don't have to be an endurance athlete of any kind. In fact, if I told you right now, you don't ever have to run the rest of your life and you can be massively fit. Do you like that?
I do.
Yeah, a lot of people would say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what it is to me. And for me, it starts with lifting heavy things. That's just kind of a generic term we can get into. But then it's also being very active and supporting yourself and your mental health, which, by the way, all this stuff supports your mental health, relationships, and everything else, assuming you don't become obsessed with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you just hit there is something that I'm hearing more and more, like sort of seeping out into pop culture, is this like lifetime wellness, not how long you live, but how well you live. You know, I'm hearing more and more people talk about that. And I mean, what do you think is behind that shift? Like, why are people starting to, you know, look at like, hey, like how long can I live a
quality? Yeah,
quality of life.
I mean, I suspect there's the fact that obesity is greater than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And also there's probably a marketing element to it, for better or worse. We know that weight loss has been marketed heavily over the years and is really ramped up with the GLP-1 drugs, you know, Ozempic and such. But at the same time, I saw during the Super Bowl commercial for Oikos yogurt, and the selling point was that it had a lot of protein and that's good for building muscle. And I said, yay. Like I applauded the fact that was in a commercial as a selling point.
Now they just need beer with like 19 grams of protein to help us. No.
Oh yeah.
Coors Light.
Beer with protein. Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, as to why, I guess the culture has definitely changed. I know if I look at my grandparents and then I look at my parents, I'm 44. Each generation seems to be a lot more focused on that. And it could be just that we are seeing what happens to the older generations and the stigmas of old, like Arnold Schwarzenegger busted through the stigma of lifting weights, right? Yeah. And then in the 70s and 80s, running culture became really big because of Nike inventing the cushioned shoe. And there was a famous book on the subject, and that whole culture took off. Nautilus created workout machines in the 70s or 80s. So we have a lot of access to gyms. CrossFit started about 20 years ago. Yeah. Huge for, hey, come together as a group, get really highly conditioned, lift some weights, use barbells, Olympic lifts. So that's kind of a multifactorial answer, in my opinion.
I think like this is like a weird metaphor, but I think like CrossFit sort of took the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing on steroids of like anybody can lift weights. Anybody can do a clean. Anybody can do a snatch. Anybody can squat. It was, even though like, I know like CrossFit put me in the hospital once, but the overall thing was
I'm happy to talk about that.
The overall thing is for both of us, it really gave us like, wow, like lifting weights is fun.
I had the best legs of my life at CrossFit.
You did?
Then I got pregnant with twins. Anyway.
What the hell?
I know.
Freaking childbirth.
Ay.
Well, cool. So let's take it. So we want to talk to, just like we just recorded a podcast earlier talking about the myths of couples counseling and how oftentimes there's one partner who wants to get in, the other person doesn't. I'm imagining you probably see a little bit of that of like one person in a couple wants to get fit, wants to feel better in their body, and another person doesn't, and sort of the problems that might cause.
Yeah, I will say the interesting thing about the space I'm in and the person that I'm speaking to is they generally are already into a little bit of a fitness lifestyle. And so some people have actually gotten through that friction point already. Yeah. But I have had both sides of the spectrum. Clients who the struggle is always that their environment is sabotaging them. And so even though they've got a plan and they are committed and they're an action taker, these slip ups will occur. And obviously we could approach it in different ways. I can't control their spouse or their relationship, but we have conversations about what you can control. And then the other spectrum is I'll have clients who then suck in their spouse to the whole thing. And then they even end up becoming a client of mine. I love to see that happen.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
And then I even hear what they talk about each other to me and they don't tell each other. That's a whole interesting dynamic.
You're getting triangulated, Philip.
Exactly. It's funny. You know, actually one example comes to mind of a mix of that where a longtime client who is super consistent. She got really strong. She loved lifting. Her diet was on point. Her husband finally started working with me and he was a big cyclist. And he had never really lifted. So I was getting him into that. So what happened is he started to interfere with her gym time at their home gym. And so the issue was like, he was fine, right? He was saying, yeah, I come in every day, I lift. And I started hearing from her, I'm having issues getting into my gym regularly. And I know I need to talk to my husband about it. You know, she knew what the solution was and they ended up talking it through, but it was just an unforeseen little obstacle that came up. And for a lot of people, the obstacles are a lot bigger than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we've found together is because, you know, we're both pretty like health conscious, but we're also very like streaky where we're into it, we're out of it. And we sort of support each other both ways. You know, once we're both into it, we're very supportive of keeping it up. But when we're out of it, we also have a way of sort of
supporting each other the opposite way.
Yeah, and not being into it and not.
That's consistency. Are you going to ask Philip like how do you help support individuals
and couples
and being like consistent with this new? I don't even want to say new, but this like motivation,
this lifestyle.
Because, you know, like things like holidays, that's when we fall off. Holidays are like when you have a week vacation, then you come back. Like, how do you support your clients in that way?
Yeah, I guess I would say that I come to it from the individual first, because that is, again, my client is one-on-one. And I think a lot of the strategies that work well for an individual to keep things flexible and sustainable translate nicely to their shared environment, whether it's with kids or with couples. The fact that it's not rigid right there is a huge advantage, Tarah, right? The fact that you're not like, I can't eat carbs, so now everybody's miserable at the table and you have to do 2 different dinners for people.
Yeah.
It is not that, because in fact, one of the earliest obstacles people will have is my spouse cooks dinner. What do? I'm trying to hit my macros or I'm trying to eat protein. And I said, just accommodate, talk to your spouse, of course, and let them know what you're hoping to have more of, or maybe share in the meal preparation with them, share in the cooking with them. But at the end of the day, your diet is flexible enough that you could just eat what they're making for you and then work on the rest of your day around that. That could work, so it's a spectrum. It depends on how good the relationship is and how much they're willing to negotiate. Again, I don't have control over those and I don't do couples counseling, but I always start with the person and then try to give them advice on how to deal with it. And if it changes, it shifts and it improves, great. If not, we go to another strategy. What else is going to work? You and I talked about on my podcast how you might have different goals, right? But you can still find shared common ground.
Right.
Like we're trying to reduce stress in our relationship or in our family. So this is my way to reduce stress, and maybe you have a different way and we're going to support each other, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for just like example, because it sounds like when you're working with somebody, is it usually weekly? Like what is your style?
So we'll do check-ins that are kind of intense check-ins every other week where I get a ton of data from them, and then I will review it and give them adjustments and analysis of the data on what to do next. But in between, they have full access to me through an app. So it's messaging, voice messages, text messages, right? As things come up.
So it's just like that constant accountability piece. it sounds like, in constant communication. Because what happens if like all of a sudden you have a client, this happens with our therapy all the time, like, oh, they start and they're so excited. And the first few weeks is like, yeah. And then what happened? Where did they go? Like, what do you do then?
Yeah. So for me, here's one example from a business owner side. I used to have paid in full contracts and now I only do monthly. And that used to be a big no-no. Like they're like, no, you've got to get the money up front, and it creates accountability because they've committed for the whole 6 months. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right. Think about when you've bought something for 6 months, you could fall off and be like, I already spent the money and move on. Whereas when it's monthly, and even though it sounds like a negative for me as a business owner, now it's on me to make sure you are getting the result every month, and it creates a mutual accountability. It actually reduces stress for me as well, helping them, because I know we both have to check in.
Yeah, it's like a monthly buy-in too for them. It's like, I'm freaking slapping my money down, so I'm going to be committed this month. You know, almost always offers the opportunity for recommitment or, you know, doubling down into it.
And they can say, hey, I'm done and I'm going to cancel. And that's on me, like not totally on me, but I take it personally because I want to make it where it's so helpful to them. I'm not in the business of like stringing people along longer than they need to be, because I feel like there's a certain level of education everyone can get with their nutrition and fitness. A lot of it, you just listen to my podcast, and I've had plenty of people reach out, say, I use the information, I'm doing great, thank you. And I'm like, cool, great, move on. If you need more advanced help, I'm here for you. And then others will say, I've been doing the thing. I've been going to the gym. I've been tracking macros. I've been doing whatever. Something's not quite working. Let's work together for that extra piece or that accountability. And then some people just want accountability. They're like, I know you're going to look at my data in 2 weeks, and that got me to get off my butt and do the thing, because otherwise I'm going to disappoint you or disappoint myself or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's important. Accountability, consistency, taking the action that gets you wins every day, like micro wins constantly. It just motivates you. It's not about discipline, not about willpower. It's like, no, I got a PR today. No, I hit my protein today. No, I whatever. And yeah.
And it feels like the more you have that, like on a daily routine, then it just becomes that new wiring in your brain, so that you won't like the temptation to fall off is less, because now this is more ingrained and getting reinforced.
Yeah. So would you say like a significant portion of your job as a coach is motivation and keeping people excited about it?
I want to take a second to think about this one. I think it's highly individual.
It is.
To the person. In other words, I might have a client, I can just think of like 10 clients right now. They're all different in terms of what they need. Every client needs something different. So some clients just want to learn from me and like level up their nutrition education. I have a client who sends me messages every day. Hey, did you hear Layne Norton on this YouTube video? You talked about protein synthesis, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? And he just wants to know that stuff. Yeah. And it keeps him going, right? Someone else is like, constantly, I'm in the gym. I need to check on my form. I need accountability. I need information. So as a coach, my job is to meet you where you are and to over communicate to an extent to make sure that you don't fall off.
Okay. Because I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, again, back into the realm of couples, what's the advice you give if like I want to support Tarah in achieving her goals, or she knows like my goal is I'm 52 this year. Like I want to be in the best shape of my life at 52. And so that's my goal. How does she help me? You know, how can she help me do that?
So who's the client here? You the client or she's
the client?
EJ's client.
I'm the client.
Okay. And is this because we're role playing here, is this an explicit concern you've mentioned that like she's not supporting you, or like lay out the context for me? Because then I think
the context is sometimes we struggle to know how to support each other with, like, you know, especially okay, here's a great one.
Yeah, this is
weekends.
Good.
Weekends is our time where our nutrition is generally pretty darn good because we're living within a structured thing with work Monday through Friday. Weekends come, we go out and have a drink with friends.
Burger, fries.
Yeah,
yum.
it's, you know, it's a little more of a free for all during the weekends. And Tarah will struggle to know how to let me know if she sees me. I don't know, like, what's something I do in a weekend where you're like, oh shit,
eating off the kids' plates.
Yeah,
just
there
like
we go.
like just eating more than we know is good. for us.
And oftentimes I will feel like judged instead of supported.
Because then I get scared, like, oh God, we're going to fall off. We were so good all week. We had our pretzels and our protein. And then I just get this anxiety, but then I don't want him to feel like judged because I want that flexibility. It's a lot, Philip. You should start doing couples coaching we could be your first clients.
I would love it. No, I've worked with couples, just not generally together.
Yeah.
And that's usually because they don't want me to do it that way. They're like, hey, I want to have because they have very specific goals that are individual goals. One might be a power lifter and one's a runner. It's like, but I could see some common things here. So, I mean, what you're hitting on is whether you're with a couple or not, everybody has others who are in their lives, right? That are going to affect them and they have their environment. It could be a roommate too. Yep. It's a similar situation. So you mentioned cheating earlier, I think. You mentioned the weekends. That is the biggest source of self-sabotage a lot of people have. And rather than say, hey, I'm going to work with you and we're going to get rid of that, it's, hey, I'm going to work with you. We're going to reframe whenever you want to have these planned indulgences as your opportunity to do exactly that, but in the context of your week where you've got some control, right? Where you've got, you're not on or off a diet. You're not all or nothing. It's, hey, here's our goal. Here are calories, here are macros. Plan it into your weekend. Just plan it in. And then you don't have to stress about it at all. Like you have a plan, you know what you're going into. Maybe you've pre-logged it. Maybe you've gotten intelligent about the foods, but not where it's restrictive. More like, hey, I'm going to have seafood and scallops instead of ribeye because it's a little bit leaner and more protein, right? But they're both delicious. Yeah. So that's one. I'm a big fan of 80-20 when it comes to the actual foods, like 80% whole foods, 20% anything goes. And some people don't like that. And I've actually spoken to some folks who are very clean oriented. Even some people who are like, I admire, who are experts out in the industry, and I just don't buy it. I think the evidence shows that doesn't work because people will binge on the thing that they're missing. Right. So 80-20 and the 20% for you, EJ might be different than the 20% for Tarah. So you've got to have both in the house.
True.
So there's a lot of strategies like that. Also controlling your environment. Like here's a really big source of sabotage is one person loves their M&Ms and they can control how much they eat. The other person would binge every time they see the M&Ms on the table. Yeah. So what's the simple solution? Get it off the table, right? Like
one that was one of the first things you said is that like, so we have a structure that we're pretty good at holding on to Monday through Friday. But we don't have structure in the weekend.
Friday
so just
4.
Is like creating a different structure. Is saying, hey, this is like a different thing. But so there's a little more wiggle room, but there's still a structure to it.
Yeah, and that's the key, because if you just do it in what they call intuitively, it's not going to work. Yeah. Most humans are way out of bed on their hunger signals. Yeah. And on their, I'll call it self-control, but it's more of they don't really know what's going in their mouth, or they don't know the amount that's going in. So step one, when I work with folks, and anybody listening who wants to improve their nutrition massively, you've got to track it. That's it. You've got to track it. I don't want to hear like, I don't like tracking, or I don't like calorie counting, or whatever. The studies are clear that it is only helpful for sticking to your diet and maintaining your results to know what you're eating. Now, the form of tracking, it's got to be easy for you. It's got to be somewhat frictionless. You know, my clients use an app that like takes them 2 minutes a day. I did a poll on my Facebook group of all the people that use this app, and I said, send me your screen time. And it was average like 3 minutes a day. And yet people say, oh, it takes too much time to log. Oh, I can't weigh myself every day. Nah, excuses, folks. You can do all that stuff,
it's like that,
and it's going to de-stress the rest of your week big time.
Well, it's like turning that blind eye. I really don't want to know how much I'm putting in my body.
There is that.
I'd rather not. I'm going to forget today.
All right. Is there, we're kind of hitting you with a barrage of stuff that are kind of specific. Does that work?
Whatever you want.
All right.
I love it.
Well, because I'm curious about what your thoughts about alcohol is, because that's another one where like we generally don't drink during the week. I think a lot of people like that, or it's a lot more moderate. And then come weekends, there's more ability. You don't have to wake up the next day. You know, maybe Sunday's our day that we don't go to the gym, so we don't have to wake up, as early. Like how do you work with alcohol, and what are your thoughts on alcohol and general wellness?
Yeah, alcohol is in a category of its own. I did an episode of my podcast. I was just looking it up. Episode 275 came out about 3 weeks ago on alcohol.
275.
And it's called The Surprising Fourth Macro That Stalls Fat Loss and Increases Belly Fat. Because I want to go right to the things that people are annoyed that they don't want. As opposed to saying, alcohol's bad for you or this or that. But the science is clear. And if anybody denies us at this point, they're in denial in that there are no upsides to alcohol whatsoever. That the reasons people drink alcohol, there's usually a substitute for it, like social reasons, stress reasons, taste. Like, people say, well, I love a good beer. Well, so do I. And I'll be honest, I still drink once every month or two, one beer every month or two, or one mixed drink every month or two. But I used to drink wine every day, and I used to drink beer on the weekend. If you have fat loss goals, it is one of the biggest detriments to fat loss. Mm-hmm. If you want to improve your hormones, it's one of the biggest detriments to your hormones. And we're talking reproductive hormones as well as insulin and cortisol. Alcohol increases chronic stress. It does not reduce it. Yeah. So in the short term, it reduces the perceived stress because you're blanking out and you're buzzed, but it actually increases your cortisol. It reduces your sleep, and sleep then increases cravings, especially for sugary and fatty foods, which then increases the amount you eat. And I can go on and on. There are zero upsides to alcohol. Having said that, start where you're at. Start where you're at and find a way to nudge down. If your goal is health, find a way to nudge down. Non-alcohol beers are amazing right now, right? And you have a light beer. I don't care. Like nudge your way down.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it almost feels too that when you get into more nutritional, physical wellness, that your narrative changes. Because like for us, a lot, it was like we burnt ourselves out during the week with all the therapy sessions. We have 4 kids, all of our therapists that we supervise, having 2 businesses. So we would like be on all the time from 6 a.m. until 11 p.m. So finally, like Saturday or Sunday fun day, and we're just like, our narrative was like, we're going to have some Bloody Marys and relax. Mm-hmm. But now it's like, no, like we still really want to be intentional through the weekends. But I think that's because we've just continued to get more healthy when we're going to the gym and when we're meal prepping.
It's cyclical too. I think that's something I think a lot of people, I think ourselves included, is if you can string together months and years of sort of moving in a certain direction, I think, things like alcohol just become less important because you're like, God dang, I feel so great getting up even on a Saturday at 6 a.m. and getting a workout in and being like, energized. But for I think it's all about like that long-term investment in it, mm-hmm. and then, goals become achievable when you're looking at them over years instead of months. I think that's one of the hard things too about like fluctuation of body size is like when you're like, this year I want to, like, it feels like a trap because it's like, well, that's whole, shifting your body composition takes a prolonged effort, right?
Yeah. There's a balance between the short-term need for a result and the long-term reality of certain results. And so if you can find the way to get a short-term micro result, it can take its place psychologically. Because what I don't want to do is tell humans don't seek instant gratification, because we do. And I don't even mean dopamine hits, because that's more of a negative generally. I mean just you don't want to go every day plodding along, doing some process that's going to give you a result 3 years from now when it absolutely doesn't fulfill you at all in the here and now. We want to live in the present moment and enjoy it. So that's actually a great point. If you are training or you're training, lifting, exercising, eating in a way that's not enjoyable and it's not getting you the result, we need to go to something that does both. Also, not something that you punish yourself with or suffer through to get the result, because that doesn't align either.
Everyone just needs to go to you. It feels very like doable and doesn't feel scary. And it feels like you really, like you create that open environment where all is okay, but within a boundary. And I think that's what we do with our couples too. The model we created, it's like you can but here's the boundary. And then we're going to help you stay within that boundary so you can feel good for yourself. And I'll be your accountability coach, whatever. But it's just like, I think a lot of people get scared, like, oh, they're going to judge me. And if he sees what I'm eating or do, and it just, you have that energy where it feels, I'm already like, EJ, you got to hire Philip for yourself since it's your year of being the best in shape of your life ever you want to do. Hello. Sometimes the universe gives us our guests for a reason.
Of long-term reward and short-term reward. I think that oftentimes is like missing. Is that I got to have some short-term payoff, and sometimes the short-term payoff is really frustrating. Like the scale is a pain in the ass. It's like when you had a few weeks and you even notice like something shifting physically when you look in the mirror, but you step on the scale and you're like, God dang, like what the hell's going on here?
So a couple things there. First, although I never professed to be a therapist, what you said, Tarah, it's funny because this job has taught me more about human emotion and like emotional intelligence and empathy than ever before. Only my wife has taught me nearly that much about, because I'm a very I always consider myself a very direct, kind of cold-hearted, logical person. And even when I was young, I was not nice to people. Like I reflected on that years ago and kind of processed through it. So I'm glad to hear that. But the thing about scale weight, this is where things are counterintuitive, EJ, because I've put videos about this as well as podcasts about why you should weigh yourself every day. And when people don't know a lot about the subject, they immediately recoil and like, oh, that sounds terrible. That sounds obsessive. In fact, they've done studies on this many times. In fact, there was a study comparing not only not weighing to weighing yourself every day, but 5 days a week to 7 days a week. And in all the cases, the everyday weighing was superior for achieving your results, maintaining your results, and having a healthier relationship with the scale. You say, well, why is that? Well, it's because our weight fluctuates far more every day due to fluid than it does due to fat. And so when you see those fluctuations day after day and you reconcile with it, eventually it becomes a data point. It becomes much less emotional. Now, you have to do something with that data that's useful. So that's where you take that long-term trend. You take that 3 weeks is a pretty good, like if you want to go get mathy about it, 3 weeks is a pretty good trend to smooth it out. Not even a 1 week average, a 3 week average to tell whether you're gaining or losing fat. And so when you superimpose the two on top of each other, like people can't see this, but imagine a big like fluctuating graph that goes up and down really fast. That's your scale weight. But then a nice smooth line up or down is the average. So if we can reframe to like, my weight's going to go up and down every day. I don't care, but I'm going to measure it. And then over time, I'll have more confidence to know I need to nudge my calories up or down to get the result I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just feel this too. And I'm just speaking for myself. Like I feel like, oh, well, if I want to lose weight, I know how to do it. And it's not true. I think like this is people like, oh, I know if I don't need therapy, I know how to do it. I'm just not ready to do it yet. There is something to be said about going to someone like yourself, who's a professional, who's done all the research, who's worked with tons and tons of people to get that support, because I think I know what I need, but I have no idea. I'm like, oh, I just need a half bowl of popcorn tonight and 1 ounce of cheese. Like, what? Where does that even come from? I just think I know. So I just feel like going to someone who has that specialty is so important so we can gain more knowledge around what each unique body needs.
Well, and just like, just like therapy, I think fitness is the same, where like one size doesn't fit all. And a lot of the solutions out there, even us, like we go to F45 because it's like, it's easy, it's just like
right down the street.
It's just like super, it's easy. It's like in and out.
45 minutes.
But we also like have sort of an innate understanding of like, it's not exactly what we need, and I think like working with an individual who's actually getting to know you, is hearing what your struggles are, is hearing what your life is seeing what your goals are, your chance of like succeeding and feeling like your work is worth it is probably a hell of a lot higher than just like, joining a group class or doing CrossFit or, going to Weight Watchers, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit at the heart of it. I recorded an interview with a client of mine, Cassandra, not Cassandra, like we were joking about earlier. Her episode will be coming out on the 28th of February. I don't know when this comes out, but it's out on my podcast on the 28th. And she talks about just like that. She said, look, I listen to your podcast. I read this stuff. I've been lifting weights. She was lifting weights the right way, doing it consistently. She was tracking her food, eating protein, and still wasn't getting the results she needed. And like, within the first week, here I am saying, oh, I see this, I see this, I see this. She's like, okay, I didn't even notice those things. And that helped her unlock and accelerate the process. Just like you said, EJ, it's like, you just need an expert to come in almost like an hour just to like diagnose everything. Yeah. That happened to me when I was lifting weights. I was too stubborn to see a coach for about 3-4 months when I first started, what I'll say is proper strength training with the big compound lifts, squats, deadlifts, stuff like that. And I thought I was learning the form properly from watching videos and reading the books. And, I'm really like methodical, and I kept watching myself. And then I went to a coach about an hour away, and in 1 hour, he just like destroyed everything I had learned in a good way by saying, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And he gave me all the right cues. And it was worth 2 years of my life, that 1 hour. Right. So just think about that. It is powerful.
Yeah.
This is a good, if people are listening to Philip and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I even get started? Like, how do people, what's the first step?
The first step is actually to check out my podcast and learn a bit about my philosophy about training and nutrition. I don't want people to reach out to work for me until they've got a little baseline knowledge going on and have tried to go to the gym and do something. Start there because you want to kind of learn about yourself and where the issues are. And then you can reach out to me at witsandweights.com.
Okay. Do you have a particular episode of your show that you're like, start with this one? Like, this is the one, if you just heard me and you got a taste for it and you're interested, this is the episode to start with.
Yeah, I have a few of those. I should have been ready for this. Let's see. So I did one called Your Very First Cut, episode 197. A cut meaning a fat loss phase.
Sure.
People don't know what that is. It's actually called Your Very First Cut, Lose 10 to 30 pounds of fat. And it walks you through the philosophy. It doesn't just say do this, do this, do this. It's like, here are the principles behind all this. Here are the basic steps. And I think I link to some of my foundational episodes in that episode. So it's a good starting point.
197.
Right.
I know you.
It this weekend.
I know you are. I know what's going to happen now. You're going to become a client of Philip's. And then you're going to be able to talk about this before and after. So Philip will be on another podcast in 6 months. Oh, you think you're
so smart.
I already know, honey. Yeah. I know it all.
No pressure, but EJ, I already know a few things that we would be working on right away.
Right on. Well, that's cool,
just from talking to you today.
It's exciting. I mean, it's exciting stuff, right? To like feel good in your body, to feel like, I know couples feel this with us, like when you meet somebody and you're like, this person can help me.
Yeah.
Like there is something, we were just talking about that earlier today of like, what an amazing feeling it is to be with somebody and be like, they can help me. Like I have these obstacles, I have this trouble with my partner, or I have this struggle with my physical body or how I feel. And when you meet somebody who you're like, yeah, they can actually help me. Like it's a freaking relief, right?
It's a relief. Yeah. Yes.
Especially when they're not going to judge you. It's a very unique relationship with a coach because they're not a family member or friend. I like to tell people that, was it you guys? No, I think it was another guest that I had who talked about emotional recovery, right? There's like the 7 types of rest and recovery. And one of them was emotional recovery. The idea that you might not be fully supported in all cases just because you're talking to a loved one or a friend. In other words, a friend, you might unload your burden and they just want to say, oh yeah, that sucks. Like they just want to support you in a loving way, but it doesn't necessarily help you address the issue like a therapist or a coach might. Cause I'm here I don't have skin in the game for you, right? I don't have skin in your life. I just want to get you what you came here for. And so there's a unique relationship you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, there's something interesting about that. It's kind of, there's this guy, Carl Rogers, who was kind of like one of the grandfathers of therapy
that was my guy.
in the early 20th century. And his stuff was about unconditional positive regard, like just that ability to like really, really care, like, hey, like I'm going to do everything I can to help you. And I really hope that I can. But then also like the cleanliness of like, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. Like, cause I'm going to go back to my life. I'm going to spend this hour with you. And then I got to go back to my own life and take care of myself. And there's something about that is like, and there's data that says like, that helps people heal. And so it's cool to see somebody who's like a kindred spirit in a different aspect of wellness. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Philip.
Likewise. Yeah. And I've been surprised at who I've been able to work with and had the honor and pleasure of working with, including people I'd never thought would seek me out. And not to put labels on things, but even just working with so many women, like 2/3 of my clients are women. And I never thought that would be a space that, peri and postmenopausal women seek me out because they want to build muscle and improve their hormones. I'm like, that's cool. Even though I'm a guy, I'll never experience that, but I've worked with a lot of women who can tell their stories and learn from it. So I can help you as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then EJ can share with you his experience with my perimenopause.
All right. Well, I will be listening to episode 197. I encourage other people to do the same. We'll definitely drop all your stuff into our show notes for this episode. And just like, it was really great speaking with you.
And thank you for doing what you do. And I'm really glad you turned like engineer into like coach. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad I met you guys because we brought you on my show to talk about relationships and fitness, and I think it's all part of life, right? We're just trying to be the best humans we can be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. It's Philip Pape from Wits and Weights. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.